Guess who got brands talking? Brandlife.co.za.
The Weekly with Sam Marshall is a podcast series that engages with people that have set a bar for themselves in how they see the world and what they're willing to do to change it. People have built, designed, created thought, and imagined through creativity and imagination. Every week on The Weekly, we unpack and strip ideas and concepts we are completely terrified of. Welcome to another episode of The Weekly with me, Sam Marshall. And as you know, on a weekly basis, we engage with thought leaders, people that have kind of decided they were going to go against the grain, just in the way they operate their lives, the kind of work that they do, how they think about things that affect us on a daily basis. And over the last couple of weeks, I've really thought about entrepreneurship, because everybody's talking about how entrepreneurship is kind of the silver bullet to unemployment, growing the GDP, and all of those kind of things. But what if you're an entrepreneur that has failed? What if you have to go back into your a traditional work life, traditional work experience, join the bees, and every day kind of carve out an existence after you've tried something and it didn't work? And you know, I thought about a couple of people that could help us really unpack this, because these guys, as I said, they are every day thinking about creating opportunities, engaging, sharing, and debating. And I really love the kind of people, because the one person I've been on a panel with, the other person I've heard speak extensively, and I've even been a bit of a moderator at her events. The one lady I'm talking about is Katie Mohammed. She doesn't really need any introduction, but she's the founder of W Suite. She's just launched her foundation. At some point, we'll sit down and talk and unpack that foundation. And then the other lady who I've also known for a while now, right, Anusha? I've kind of known you for a while. Yeah. But I mean, you're kind of the head of an international organization that really looks at and creates opportunities for youth, but it's a little bit more than that in terms of that. It's not just surface level stuff, but it's really deep, meaningful, constructive conversations with different role players. I'm right?
Right, that's right. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Anusha and Katie is joining me today, and I feel privileged, but I want to throw out this question because it bothers me. What do you do when you're a failed entrepreneur, Katie?
Oh, that sounds so bad. It does. I think as an entrepreneur, nobody wants to see themselves as failed, but like we talked earlier on, it's a reality of life. Things happen. Whatever the conditions are, failed entrepreneurs, we tend to personalize it, and sometimes we think, is it us? But if you look at people like Steve Jobs, Walt Disney, Oprah Winfrey, all have been failed entrepreneurs before their successes as well. So I think for me is sitting back and finding out why we failed, and if it's out of our control, how do we get to, like we talked earlier about, is how do we get to relaunch ourselves as non-entrepreneurs? Yeah.
How do you, she doesn't like the word failed entrepreneur, but you're an entrepreneur, Anusha, and you didn't succeed. You tried something. You, at some point, worked for a corporate company, worked for somebody, saw a gap in the market, went on your own, and then it worked for a while, and then all these things are against you, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality, right? It does happen. And I think where I agree with Katie is there are factors that are outside of your control. So whilst you could have a process in place that's really set to succeed, the economy could have shifted in a way that just works against you, or the GDP shrunk at a time when you were expecting it to grow. So again, I think putting all the failure on yourself as an individual isn't necessarily a fair reflection. But I think the fact that you took the decision to even embark on the journey of entrepreneurship is quite a successful one in the first place. And the fact that it didn't necessarily work out the way that it was that you planned to, or the outputs didn't align the way that one had planned to, there's so many lessons that come from that experience that I think are vital and valuable in a corporate environment that you can display again, or the network that you've built in that world of entrepreneurship that a corporate would certainly benefit of. So it's about positioning yourself as an individual who actually has gathered and garnered all of these skills that are vital and key for the corporate world in sort of repositioning yourself for that world?
Yeah, I'm going to be the devil in this conversation. And when you're a skilled orator, when you understand the language and you know how to use it, you end up being an Anusha and a Katie, right? Where you find the words to make you feel great. The reality is, I worked as Sam for someone. Today for example, we're recording this podcast at Katie's offices, right? Brand-Fusion, where it's also the Brand-Fusion Foundation. But I left a job. I got paid a ton of money or some money. I saw a vision for something. I tried something. It doesn't work. And I'm not taking a single thing away from what you're saying, but none of those things work for me. I now have to go back into the ordinary working environment. Let's say I was a logistics manager. I was a supervisor somewhere. I was a CEO of something, tried something new. It didn't work. And now I've got to, with cap in hand, put out my CV again and go into that environment knowing that I've spent a ton of money and it didn't work. How do I get over that? Because here's the truth, Katie and Anusha. I'm going to sit opposite somebody who says, what have you done for the last 5 years? And he says, well, I tried my own business. And human beings being human beings, that person is going to say, okay, what happened? Well, I tried to do this and it didn't work. Now, in an ideal world, the interviewer would look at the interview and go, wow, this is an amazing person. They've learned a lot. They've been worked. They took initiative. They managed. But that's not sometimes the outcome of an admittance of failure.
But I think we also have to understand, why didn't it work? Like, didn't it work because of the financial, because it was not financially viable that it didn't work? Or didn't it work because your product or your solutions weren't taken? So I think we need to understand why we failed entrepreneurs. Because I think I'm also, again, on this conversation of from an entrepreneurship, do we create jobs? Are we creating our own jobs, or are we entrepreneurs? I think when we understand that, are we creating our own jobs? So sometimes I look back and say, am I an entrepreneur, or have I just created a job for myself? And I think when you have that and you say, did I fail because my product or my service did not come to fruition, or did I fail because I didn't make any money? So for me, I think that is, yeah.
But here's the thing.
Am I failed because I didn't ever make any money?
But here's the thing, though. Without money, you can't continue. You can't grow. There's no point in starting a business that's not going to bring you. And I mean, the expert tells us, every entrepreneurship expert tells you that, you've got to, whether you create a job for yourself or start a business for others or impact the world or whatever, it's got to make money. And if it doesn't make money, you're going to have to close shop, right?
No, for sure. No, I certainly agree with that. That is the reality, right? And one needs to be realistic, unless you're a social entrepreneur. But even so, you would want to generate some kind of revenue to keep it sustainable.
But social entrepreneurs also should make money.
Of course, I agree.
Anything I learned, anything that's transformational has to be transactional as well.
Of course.
Otherwise, we'll be sitting here and kumbayaing and say.
But you,
and that's.
But you're both also employers. You employ people. Yeah. You create opportunities for employment. If somebody who after 5 years failed, and you go into that meeting, this job interview, and the person says to you, and I'm not 100% sure, I think it's a whole bunch of factors, but at the point is, was that person not the captain of the ship? Did he not fail? I mean, forget the external factors. Anusha?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, I want to relate to what Katie's saying. What exactly did he fail at, and exactly how did it fail? Because, you say he was the captain of his own ship. That interests me and it intrigues me in an interview. He's then displayed leadership qualities, strong ones, right? Because he steered the ship for 5 years. He's displaying conflict resolution skills. He's displaying excellent communication skills, all of what you need to be that captain of the ship. Those are things that I'm going to be attracted, or the skills that I'm going to be attracted to in this person that I'd like to see come out in that interview, which are of value to me as an employer.
Katie?
And sometimes I think, as an employer, and I'm sure the employees will look at it as well from a point of, okay, so, you try to be an entrepreneur, it didn't work. Imagine if this employer gave an opportunity to that failed entrepreneur, what can come out of him just because he's not chasing money could be amplified. Because remember, sometimes you're failing because you're chasing money, like we said. So now all of a sudden, this employer would say, okay, fine, let me find something in you. Let me give you the opportunity to earn some money. And then all that you can deliver on is the whole issue about chasing money wouldn't be a problem. And that person could be a great employee at that time. I do agree on that.
How his energy is redirected into
in fact,
channel.
you can probably get a lot more from that individual.
Absolutely.
Knowing that the fact that the bills are getting paid for. However, and I think we also need to be realistic about failed entrepreneurs, especially, having worked with, a lot of young freelancers and a lot of people that are trying to wing it. Why are we failing? Are we not hanging out with the right people? Are we not getting support? And we constantly also blame people that people are not supporting us. We need to be out there in order. So we can't just sit back and say, oh, you know what, I tried to do this and it's failed. And then now, corporate must find me a job and fix it.
Is failure at an entrepreneurship level more devastating the older you are? Because you're talking about young people failing and then going into the workforce. They have this nature of bouncing back. But if you're a 40-something, 50 or something failed entrepreneur having to now go back into the workforce, is that a little bit emotionally different?
I mean, I think that's a mindset thing, and I would like to think that it can shift. Because yes, for some reason we think, okay, if I'm younger and I took a stab at it and I failed, well, I can just restart. Right? Because I've got years. I've still got years ahead. And if I take a stab at it at 40 and if I fail, well, I shouldn't have taken that jump. I think that's a mindset thing, right? Because I think in one of my classrooms the other day we spoke about Colonel Sanders, KFC.
Yeah.
He only launched that when he was like 77. Right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I think it's also, it's about self as well. It's about self-esteem as well. So when you're older and I try to do this for a couple of years now, I'm out there in the job world and I'm trying to get an interview. I think there was also a TED Talk called relaunches. They call them relaunches. So how do you relaunch yourself when you're older? So you have all this expertise, you have all this knowledge, this wisdom, how things can be done, how things don't work out. So I think it's a lot of self-esteem you have to have in order for an older person to go back into business after having things, not work out for them. So I think the moment you start having, the self-confidence, the self-awareness, the self-esteem, it makes it a little bit easier.
Okay, so I want to be the devil in this conversation because I slightly disagree. I think that if you're an older person, you're a something male or even an older woman, you have failed at a business, you now have to go back to being a supervisor somewhere or manager somewhere. You've got the added pressure of family. You've got the added pressure of all these other things that play into it. You're living in a digital society at the moment where everything is photograph, video and film. All of that could give your self-esteem a pretty big knock, especially if people around you know that you launched a business and there was a time in this business that it looked like you were a high flyer.
Sure. I mean, I get that, but it's also about, I suppose, how you've put your profile out there. Whether I'm Anusha Naicker and this is what I embarked on for 5 years.
There's also perception, Anusha.
Yeah, but I've decided to change gears. I'm not necessarily going to sell myself as I failed at that.
But we also, Anusha, I always think
it's perception, though. People see Katie Mohammed. Katie Mohammed is a high flyer. She just came from Dubai. Anusha is the head of an international fund, and all of a sudden they're unemployed. It didn't work out, and now they're back to what people perceive to be square one.
I don't think we even should care about people. I think when you get older, as we are, we like whatever it is. For me, I always say that if you do not evolve, if you're not innovative, so these older people, if they're not with it, as we all say it, or our children say it, if we do not keep in touch with what is going on in society, and we never, so we can't sit and blame the rest of the world if we are not evolving with ourselves. In a space where there was no television many years ago, then there was television. These old people still, know how to turn the television on. I mean, I watch my mom, glued onto Netflix these days. 10 years and 20 years ago, she was telling us not to watch television. So I think it is upon individuals. My challenge is we constantly have this blame victim mentality that I'm also on this journey of having conversations of how can we change this attitude. You failed. How can we make it better? You failed. What didn't you make right? I think we constantly need to stop blaming people. So yes, Sam, if you're older, I think we are all pretty old, but we've kind of evolved with the time. And I think the moment, where people see you on social media and say, oh, life is so fabulous and life didn't happen, do you know what? There'll be somebody else that they're going to talk about in 2 days anyway.
Oh.
Look, okay, I hear you, and I personally don't buy into just. I did a podcast the other day talking about bad reputations, and how bad reputations, there are levels to bad reputations. Even a person with a level 1 bad reputation won't hang out with a person who's level 10 bad reputation. I just think entrepreneurs are under so much pressure at the moment to succeed, and they are the silver bullet to the GDP, to job growth, all of that. But and I was, like we were saying the other day, what we're not doing at the moment is we're complaining about the rain all of a sudden, but we're not talking about the rivers being full, the farmers and all that stuff. So it's easy to focus on negative. But there are entrepreneurs that are failing. There are entrepreneurs that at the end of this year are going to have to make tough choices. They're going to have to go back to into the workforce. They're going to have to deal with family members and friends who have put them on a pedestal somewhere in their ether, and now they're going to have to go back into a very basic, because the economy is tough. We're record high unemployment. You're going to have to settle for what you can find at whatever rate you can find it. And I want to know, how does that entrepreneur make peace with seeing Katie fly high and their business has failed, seeing the brother in the family who's a successful business person, but you failed, and you have to go back and admit that you failed? Because I hear you about self-esteem, self-belief, but there's a practical person right now who's lost everything, and they're going to have to go back into the workspace, and they don't have the self-esteem tools to draw on. They don't have a Katie and Anusha in their corner saying, you can do it. And they're sitting there in that corner and they've got no money. They're going to have a horrible December. They have been a senior manager for a long time, or he's 35 years old, was smart enough, clever enough to start his own business, and it's failed. And now he's got to go back. And he's got to deal with a whole bunch of things.
For me, I just think that, what is due to you will come to you. I always believe that. And I think the things that are not working, there's a lesson from it not working as well. We've all been there. We might look successful today, or we are successful today, but there was a time that we had a transition from corporate into entrepreneurship. And, if you don't have people, like Anusha and I would call each other, and we would spend hours on the phone and talking about how things are not working out. So it is important to rather hang out with people that can actually lift you up through this transition. So yes, the reality is that there is no money, and there is no this, and there is no that. But what is the alternative? What will the alternative be?
Is society kind to failed entrepreneurs, Anushka?
Not necessarily. No, I don't think so. I think...
Are we kind to failed entrepreneurs?
No, I think we kind of like shun, or we kind of like say, you tried something and you failed, and so it's completely broken, and I'm not necessarily sure how to uplift you, or I think society is kind of unkind. But I'm not going to sit here and deny that it is a tough road. It is a tough journey. It is a reality. If you tried something, you're 35 and it didn't work out the way that you wanted to, now there's this season approaching where everybody's on a high, I suppose. So it is challenging. But like Katie says, there is a network that you build, or like I started out by saying, there's a network that you build when you were in that world of work.
But how authentic is that network? Because we all meet each other at events. We're all nice to each other. We're always only seeing the best side of each other. Now, I know for a fact the story we love the story of a Simon Cowell who failed, and now he's this rich producer. Sean P. Diddy Combs at some point was a failure. He had something, lost it, and then rebuilt it. We like that stories. We don't like to meet Sean or P. Diddy Combs at the bottom of the ladder. We like to meet him again at the top of the ladder. So how authentic can you be with those networks?
But I think those people did have people around them that did support them. Even, P. Diddy also had one or two people that did believe in them, whether it was, people like Eminem or all of them. There was somebody that was there that they trusted. And for me, networks is a relationship that's built over time. So when you are going through something that is beyond your control, those networks are supposed to be able to step in.
And what are they supposed to do?
And if they're authentic, not handouts, because I don't believe in just handouts. It's just maybe sitting and understanding what didn't work out. For us, for me, and I think you and I have always had this conversation, it's not really about giving someone a job or giving someone money. It is about what is the next level of opportunity there. Maybe just sharing why it didn't work out, conversations. So for me, it's if that person that's a failed entrepreneur and has a job, already there's a positive. The fact is that he can have some money to pay something, to buy food or something, there's a little bit of a positive. So it's always not negative. So like we always say, is that we do live beyond our means sometimes as well. So as an entrepreneurs, if we had X amount of money, it failed, now we don't have, how do we live according to what we are going to get? So there's a positive in at least getting a job that is paying us something.
They're going to be adjustments. There have to be adjustments. And one needs to be realistic enough to make those. I also think when I talk about your network, I'm talking about tapping into them and not necessarily relying on them. Because like Katie says, nobody's going to come to the rescue and give you 100K as a handout, right? But they're there to listen, to hear, what is your action plan now? Okay, so what are you going to do going forward? But listen, can I critique this a little bit for you? Because I don't think you've thought that out well enough. Let's unpack that further. Give advice, bounce ideas back, help to critique. That's what your network is there for. And that creates a lot of strength, actually, and structure.
So just to wrap this conversation, if you're a failed entrepreneur in 2019 and you're facing back into the kind of worker bee mindset of employment, what are the top three things you have to either make peace with, deal with, or kind of get to grips with? Katie?
I think definitely, failed entrepreneur 2019, it's a new decade, number one. So change your lifestyle. Change your lifestyle. If you were used to X, do Y. If you had, 50,000, now you have 20,000, work around 20,000. There is no shame of living your life, changing your lifestyle. There's no shame in that. That's definitely number one. Also, create new contacts that could take you through the journey of corporate, failed entrepreneur into corporate. So also maybe not change, maybe enhance the people that you hang around with, that could like-minded people. I mean, social media is a brilliant platform to tweet and say, have not done this. And also just be authentic about the fact that this didn't work out for you. And I always say is, let's not be angry about the fact that it didn't work out for us. Let's find the positive. And also for me, importantly, is what is this lesson that why it didn't work out for me? What is the lesson? And I think sometimes if you take the holidays to kind of reflect on what the lessons are, in a new decade of 2020, things might be very different. In fact, you might actually enjoy working in corporate and having the safety. I had a school friend a couple of years ago when I was like, trying to get through this entrepreneurship thing, said to me, I have 62 paychecks till the end of my retirement. And there was a kind of peace in the way she said that. I sat there and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to listen, carry on. She's like, I have 62 paychecks till my retirement. So it could be a change of mindset.
Sure.
Top three things for you?
For me, I think very important, let it go. It happened. You can't linger over it. You can't just have this hanging over you for the year that's coming. You got to let it go. Cut it out, let it go. Re-engineer yourself. Show that you are dynamic, because I did this for 5 years. So I'm a dynamic individual. And take the strengths that came from that experience, because there are skills that you mastered and learned during those experiences. And that's valuable in a corporate world. Display those strengths again of leadership, etc.
Ladies, thank you very much. 23 minutes of insight. So if you're a failed entrepreneur in 2019 and you are staring the bleak reality that there's, as Anusha says, there's no 100K waiting around the corner, and you have to put your CV out there again, and you have to go through that processes, maybe the fact that you've run a business, you've employed some people, you try to do something, could actually be an added value on your CV. You can catch us on a weekly. It's on our social TV platforms, or just go to brandlive.co.za.